Parts of Victoria remain under a flood threat as rivers, creeks and catchments reach capacity. Rain is easing across the state, but several major flood warnings are still in place, including at Shepparton, where river levels are approaching record highs. Immediate evacuation orders are in place for communities near Maribyrnong at Murchison. Others at risk include those surrounding Mount Emu Creek, the Ovens and King Rivers, Broken River, Severn and Castle Creeks, Goulburn River, Campaspe River, Loddon River, Avoca River, Waimira River. More than 4,000 homes remain without power and up to 1,000 have been impacted or isolated by severe flooding. Thousands of people have been forced from their homes and hundreds rescued.
The flood emergency spreads statewide, water inundating Maribyrnong just 15 kilometres west of the Melbourne CBD, and a myriad of regional Victorian towns, especially Rochester.
But this event has obviously well and truly started and will run for a number of days. We won't see peak levels of flood water for quite a while.
The peak at Maribyrnong came in the morning. Residents caught off guard. Many abandoned cars. Local community groups were inundated. Others got to high ground. Hundreds of homes were flooded, and among at least 200 rescues, families who stayed forced to float to safety.
Well done.
Well done, mate.
Residents stoked to have the help.
We just felt that it's probably time to make the right call and not compromise ourselves or anyone.
A flood like this not seen since the mid-70s, giving some a story to tell. There were fears a main road bridge could collapse.
The river has risen to levels that we haven't seen. It hasn't crossed the bridge at this stage, but just as a safety precaution, we're going to get the bridge inspected.
By the afternoon, the focus shifted west to Werribee. Creeks swollen, roads swallowed. As authorities made emergency payments available and authorised plans to open the Mickleham Relief Centre, only closed last week as a COVID quarantine facility.
But we've got agreement from the Commonwealth who own the place. We are reactivating some contracts that had been related to quarantine activity.
Despite the widespread damage set to go into the tens of millions of dollars, the government held back on declaring a state of disaster.
It will be continued to be explored over coming days, but at this point in time, that there is no need to acquire property, there's no need to suspend legislation to do certain things, and there's no need to force the evacuation of people.
But the Premier warned he wouldn't hesitate to make the declaration if the situation changes, as Daniel Andrews took a chopper to flood-affected towns in central Victoria to survey the damage. In regional Victoria, the town of Seymour came under direct threat as the spillway opened from Lake Eildon into the Goulburn River, with thousands of megalitres released into the waterway. But there's anger too from Melbourne residents who say the warnings weren't strong enough.
There was no community meeting. They knew this was coming up. There was also no pamphlet or any address to come here. So I knew where to go, but neighbours didn't. So giving them directions, that'd be helpful.
And while the Weather Bureau's forecasts were right, the SES's flood forecast for Melbourne was not.
Then we have the Maribyrnong River here in Melbourne. The upper reaches of the Maribyrnong River are currently under a Watch and Act for a major flood warning. We are likely to see, fortunately, only a small number of properties affected on that river system, around 3 houses and also one of the local taverns. We're reasonably confident that as the water comes through to Maribyrnong Township, that it will remain within the levees. So as early as Tuesday, we were door-knocking the community in and around the Maribyrnong River to advise them of the potential risk of flooding in their area. We then had a Watch and Act for moderate flooding that was in place to indicate that there was the risk, and that progressively got increased over the 24 hours that then preceded that.
The scale of the crisis so sharp across the state of Victoria as the clean-up begins. Simon Love, Sky News, Melbourne.